I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons, my Bibliosprand, Bibliohowlers, and Bibliomancers. Thank you so much for supporting my hobby and passion even more. It means so much to me. Hi everyone, Petrik here. Today's video will be a book review of my most anticipated book of this year. And yes, today I will be doing a full spoiler-free review, as much as I can anyway, for The Last Metal by Brandon Sanderson. This is the final book in Mistborn Wax and Wayne series, or in other words, the second era to the Mistborn saga, which will consist of 4 eras. So if you follow me on Twitter or on Goodreads, then you will probably know already that I finished The Last Metal last week, but I think it is only now that I'm confident with my review, and yeah, today I will be doing a full spoiler-free review for The Last Metal. And in my opinion, The Last Metal was an explosive and stunning conclusion to the Mistborn Wax and Wayne series. Sanderson has delivered another tremendous finishing volume in the Mistborn saga, reinforcing my excitement for future Cosmere books. I honestly have no idea where to begin here. I mean, The Last Metal was my most anticipated book of 2022, but the release of this book actually goes beyond that. Many of you probably know already that the first Mistborn trilogy was the series that actually made me fall in love with reading fantasy novels. On top of that, it felt surreal to actually finish reading The Last Metal. So for the past 6 years, the longest books on my TBR pile were 3 books. The Dawn of Amber Lane by Scott Lynch, then The Doors of Stone by Petrik, and also The Last Metal by Brandon Sanderson. And yes, against all odds, one of these books that always felt like myth to me have finally been released and be read and finished by me. But my expectations for The Last Metal was understandably so high. I am fully caught up with every book in the Cosmere, every novel, every title, every short story, every novella. I am fully caught up with them. I even did a full reread of the entire Mistborn saga, starting from Mistborn Final Empire up to the Bands of Mourning in preparation for The Last Metal. And Brandon Sanderson, once again and to no surprise, exceeded my expectations in many ways with The Last Metal. He proved himself once again why he continued to become one of my favorite authors of all time. Making a spoiler-free review for The Last Metal was not an easy task for me, to say the least. It was really difficult. Sanderson has mentioned for a while now that The Last Metal will be the book that features the biggest Cosmere crossovers and connections so far. And he was not joking about this. Even the main plot in The Last Metal actually involves beings and characters from other worlds beyond Scadrial. Scadrial is the world where the entire Mistborn saga takes place. I have actually spent hours in making sure this review is as spoiler-free as possible. But I will mention a few terms and organizations from other series in this book review. And yeah, this is unavoidable. We're almost halfway through the Cosmere timeline so far, and Sanderson and his grand vision cannot wait for all readers to catch up. And to be fair, it has been 16 years since the first Mistborn was first released. So yeah, there is no spoiler for the Mistborn saga in this review, but I sincerely hope that you're familiar with the Cosmere before watching this review or maybe reading The Last Metal. With that in mind, let me first answer the 3 most frequently asked questions, and I think a lot of you are watching this review for the purpose of getting answers to these 3 questions. And the first one, does The Last Metal spoil other books and series beyond the Mistborn saga? Other books and series in the Cosmere beyond the Mistborn saga? Mostly no, but personally speaking, and some of you might not agree with this, I think there is one spoiler for those of you who haven't read the Stormlight Archive up to the end of Rhythm of War. I personally think that this is a spoiler. So in the Stormlight Archive, there is an organization named the Ghostbloods. The Ghostbloods is a major organization in the Stormlight Archive. Knowing its existence from reading The Last Metal, I don't think that can be considered as a spoiler. I think that's not too much of a big deal. However, if you read The Last Metal before reading the Stormlight Archive, you will immediately know who the real leader behind the Ghostbloods. And yeah, this doesn't get revealed in the Stormlight Archive until the end of Rhythm of War. So if you're reading The Last Metal first, you will know the identity of the leader of the Ghostbloods that was first revealed in Rhythm of War, at the end of Rhythm of War. So that's up to you to consider whether this is a spoiler or not. But I know that if you read The Last Metal first before catching up to the Stormlight Archive, I think your experience of reading the Stormlight Archive will be completely different than when you haven't read The Last Metal. That's in my opinion anyway. Definitely for every plot that involved the Ghostbloods. And speaking of spoilers, if you're reading The Last Metal in an ebook format like I did, I don't recommend you to check out the table of content. It doesn't take a genius to predict a major event in the Lost Metal just from actually checking out the table of content. Specifically on the list of chapters, make sure to skip that. That's just my suggestion anyway. And the second most frequently asked question to me: which books should you read first before reading The Lost Metal? This is a trickier question than it sounds, because every book in the Cosmere is now interconnected so deeply. And sooner or later, you will miss plenty of connections or get spoiled by something if you decided to skip an installment or two. Like the example that I just mentioned to you earlier regarding the Ghostbloods, the identity of the leader behind the Ghostbloods. I know that some readers will call this a chore, especially if they haven't started reading any of Brandon Sanderson's books, but I personally call it a charm because I love I love pretty much all the books in Cosmere, really. Just in case, because just mentioning the books that you should read will actually imply the origin of the world hoppers that appeared in this book, I will just put them and pin this answer in the comment section, but I will put a spoiler alert. But it goes without saying that you should read every book in the Mistborn saga first before reading The Lost Metal, and this includes the first trilogy and also Mistborn Secret History. I think these are a must. Additionally, you should also read all the series I mentioned in the comment section, if possible anyway, but if not, these are not mandatory. I think just reading the entire Mistborn saga will make you capable of understanding the main plot and the main character development of the main characters in the Mistborn Wax and Wane. But from my own experience, I would have been lost or confused in plenty of sections in The Lost Metal if I haven't read all the books and series I mentioned in the comment section before reading The Lost Metal. And finally, the last frequently asked question: was The Lost Metal worth the 6 years wait? Absolutely yes. Similar to the publication time gap between The Bands of Mourning and The Lost Metal, the story in The Lost Metal begins 6 years after the end of The Bands of Mourning. The hunt for the shadowy organization, the set, continues once more. And after Wax discovers and confirms a new type of bomb that can unleash an unprecedented level of destruction is in the set's possession, he realized he must once more take on the role of Harmony's sword, together with Wayne, Marasi, and Steris. Especially after hearing Harmony's immortal agent inform that Harmony's power is somehow blocked in Bilming. As I mentioned earlier in this review, one of the conflicts of The Lost Metal involves off-worlders beyond Scadrial, both protagonists and antagonists. And as a Mistborn and Cosmere fan, I will say this: I love reading the non-stop race against time in The Lost Metal. The Lost Metal is filled with an engaging plot, empathizing characterizations, and ambitious world building. The themes of politics, justice, responsibility, forgiveness, individualism, science, love, friendship, and redemption were written and compounded magnificently in this book. No page in The Lost Metal felt redundant to me, especially if you are caught up with all the books in the Cosmere, and everything eventually reached an incredibly satisfying conclusion. It was a time of ashfalls and tyrants in the Hero of Ages, drawn by the cloud of darkness, the power of an evil god, and surrounded by shard bodies. A new myth, legend, and group of heroes were forged. And the characters and story in the first trilogy became the foundational lore for the entire Mistborn Wax and Wane series. Willingly or not, the events in The Lost Metal will traject the main characters of the second era of Mistborn saga toward a similar path. They're guaranteed to become legends in the third era of the Mistborn saga, which, if all goes according to plan, will have its first installment begin in the year 2025 or 2026. I always appreciate when an author succeeds at making every book, including the final installment in their series, imbued with substantial character development. Sanderson's quality of writing has improved so much since The Bands of Mourning, and I think this is reflected most in the character development, the characterizations, and also the world building. Believe me, this is saying a lot, especially considering that I have always loved Brandon Sanderson's writing and storytelling style. Remember that I just reread the entire Mistborn saga in preparation for The Lost Metal, and it is easy to notice the increase in quality of writing and storytelling skill. I guess this shouldn't come as a surprise though. Lost Metal aside, in the past 6 years, Sanderson also wrote Oathbringer, Rhythm of War, Dawn Shard, Skyward, Starsight, Cytonic, and the 3 Skyward Flight novellas, and then 4 secret novel projects, and then God knows what else. But if someone told me back then, after I finished the first Mistborn trilogy, that I would end up loving the characters of Mistborn Era 2 as much as I love the characters in Mistborn Era 1, I would have immediately dismissed the notion. But The Lost Metal certainly proved me wrong. Waxillium, Wayne, Marasi, and Steris, especially starting from The Bands of Mourning, are the core characters of Mistborn Wax and Wane. But even then, it is easy to say that Wax has received the most spotlight and development throughout the series up to the Lost Metal. Steris did not become one of my favorite heroines of all time until the Bands of Mourning. There isn't much more room for Wax and Steris to develop as characters and a couple, but I'm gratified to read about their relationship development. The slow burn romance building and realization of how much they grew to care about each other were well written throughout this series, and I think it is safe to say that I've come to love Wax and Steris as much as I love the relationship between Vin and Elend, even if it's for different reasons. Wax and Steris probably have the most mature relationship out of all of Sanderson's couples in the Cosmere so far. The way they complement and support each other while acknowledging each other's strengths and weaknesses were inspiring. And even if there weren't too many scenes in the Lost Metal to showcase this, every interaction and fun thoughts they had effectively displayed it. But of course, the series wouldn't be titled Mistborn Wax and Wayne without the duo and bromance of, well, Wax and Wayne. Wax and Wayne have often been one of my favorite duos of all time in fantasy, and the Lost Metal has highly cemented their position in my rank. The sense of trust and understanding Wax and Wayne have toward one another, and how they constantly lift each other up when their partner is down, were palpable, heartwarming, and entertaining in equal measure. I'm confident readers will be satisfied with the end of their journey, like I did. And speaking of Wayne is one of the two characters that developed the most in the Lost Metal. It was unbelievable. Look, I like Wayne. As I said, I've continuously loved the Wax and Wayne duo, but Wayne has always been Wayne. Yes, we saw him hide his pain and regret behind his jokes and happy-go-lucky attitude in the previous books. However, we finally really see the maximum depth and complexity of his character and personality in the Lost Metal. Now that we're at the end of the series, I have to say that if I have to choose, I will have to say I love Wayne more than Wax as an individual. Their final results anyway. There is one more main character that developed the most in the Lost Metal other than Wayne, Marasi Combs. Marasi to me felt like an integral character overshadowed by the presence of the other characters in the previous books. Sure, she has some moments in the spotlight, but relatively, they were repeatedly too short to remember. When I reread Mistborn Wax and Wayne, I actually, turns out, forgot most of her actions and roles in the series. Fortunately, this situation has been fixed thoroughly in the Lost Metal. The new duo of Marasi and Wayne was so good. And I cannot go into details on this, but Marasi, together with the other characters from other worlds and series, played an irreplaceable role in the plot of the Lost Metal, and I had a blast every moment of reading her POV chapters here. I have no doubt Mistborn and Cosmere fans will feel the same as I did. Alright, let's talk a bit about world hoppers in this book here. If you're a Cosmere fan like me and you're caught up with every book in the Cosmere, it is hard to imagine the possibility of the world hopper characters and their magic system in this book not becoming a spotlight for you. Unquestionably, it was for me. Again, no spoilers on their identity here, but there were at least 8 world hopper characters in the Lost Metal. These are characters from other worlds and series in the Cosmere universe. And yeah, most of these appearances and scenes are something that you should read and find out for yourself. I will, however, mention that I am in awe of every scene that involved the two most dominant world hoppers in this book, Moonlight and Twin Soul. Moonlight, no, I will not tell you her identity, do not worry about this, is one of my favorite characters in the entire Cosmere. Assuming that I'm not wrong on her identity though. But if it is true, to see her appearing in the Lost Metal, exhibiting her magic system, and playing a huge role in the story totally made my day. I was soaring with glee and excitement after finding out who Moonlight was. I did not expect this at all, and it was a truly welcome surprise. And then there is Twin Soul, who I believe is a completely new character in the Cosmere, and this is his first appearance. And Sanderson mentioned this at the beginning of the book. I would like to extend a special thanks to my good friends Kalyani and Rahul, longtime beta readers who have been encouraging me for years to look into Indian mythology and lore for inspiration for fantasy storytelling. They provided excellent consultation in this book on a certain character who the three of us work on together to try to expand the Cosmere a little bit in this direction. And this is where Twin Soul comes in. Yes, you heard that right. Indian mythologies are now playing more of a role in the Cosmere. And the results of this inclusion here in this book were bloody outstanding and unforgettable. Seriously, Moonlight and Twin Soul, for the lack of better words, were so cool and awesome. Simple as that. I don't think it is far-fetched to call the Lost Metal the Cosmere volume equivalent of MCU Avengers Infinity War. Remember, this is the final book in the second era of Mistborn saga. That fact, plus the high quantity of Cosmere crossovers and magic systems in the Lost Metal, summon one of the best Sunderlands so far. From my perspective, almost the entirety of the second half of the Lost Metal counts as the Sunderlands portion. It was more or less 200 pages of action scenes with brief respites. Terrible forces are moving in the Cosmere, and the stakes of the imminent devastation the characters need to prevent were the most dangerous and epic in scope out of all the books in Mistborn, Wax and Wayne. It has been 2 years since I read Rhythm of War, and I have missed my time of reading a new post-panding Sunderland sequence full of carnage, peril, explosions, and emotions. As scenes dissolve in the crystal clear, vivid imagery, I was once again reminded why I never failed to think of Sanderson as one of the best authors in crafting memorably superlative climax sequences in epic fantasy. Magic systems from other series and massive Cosmere implications aside, The Lost Metal successfully made me more eager for the future of the Mistborn saga. Scadrial continues to be one of my favorite worlds in fantasy. I may not love it as much as Roshar, but it is still one of my most cherished worlds in the genre, and it is undoubtedly one of the most special ones for me. With the arrival of new metals, the evolution and combination of allomancy, feruchemy, and hemalurgy ceaselessly keep the magic system, actions, and world building in Scadrial mesmerizing. Also, one of my favorite factors of reading Sanderson's book is the function of advancing technologies and science in his world. But this was never done at the expense of forgetting the core history of each respective world in Cosmere. For example, in Mistborn, Wax and Wayne, Sanderson constantly relates to the events of the first Mistborn trilogy, while at the same time showing how technologies and science believably transformed the world of Scadrial. Based on what I've read here, it is more possible than not that the next era of Mistborn saga will be more superb, intricate, and mind-blowing. So let's end this review, shall we? I think The Lost Metal is an explosive and spectacular conclusion to the Mistborn, Wax and Wayne series. It is a half Mistborn, a half Cosmere crossover novel. Although a finale is relatively rare in his career, with The Hero of Ages and The Lost Metal, Sanderson proved how great he is at writing a concluding volume in his Cosmere universe, and this quantity won't stay for long. Next year, we will get the conclusion to the Skyward series, and I know that Skyward is not part of the Cosmere as far as I know. And then the year after, we will get the conclusion to the first half of the Stormlight archive. And I feel blessed. I feel blessed to partake in this decades-long adventure of the Cosmere universe. And to wrap this review, I would just say that The Lost Metal is my second favorite Mistborn installment in the entire Mistborn saga so far, just next to The Hero of Ages, which I'm completely biased on. So thank you so much to Brandon Sanderson for producing another exceptional novel and concluding book in the Mistborn saga and the Cosmere. I am equally rewarded and brimming with questions and theories now after reading The Lost Metal. And it is suffice to say that I am looking forward to reading the third era of the Mistborn saga. But until then, to all of you watching this review, if there is one message from this book and series that we should always remember, I think it is this: always try to be kind. So yeah, that's the end of this review, and I want to say thank you so much once again to Golangs for providing me an e-arc of The Lost Metal for me to read and review early. It means a lot to me to finally have the chance to read and review The Lost Metal early, and I'm sure that many Mistborn fans, especially if you're also a Cosmere fan who has caught up with every book, every title in the Cosmere, will have a great time reading The Lost Metal. So yeah, that's it for me today. If you have read The Lost Metal, do let me know what you think of the book. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.